In today's world, everyone wants a secret potion that makes you look younger and feel better. But what if I told you it's not a pill that you take or a serum that you put on your skin, but rather the key to aging backwards is your location? It sounds crazy, but you're about to meet a man who has literally aged backwards just by changing where he lives. You're not going to want to miss this one, so stay tuned. Welcome to the Panama Podcast, from dreaming to doing. I'm your host, Melissa Darnay, an American who's been living her someday, every day since 2012. Get ready for a weekly dose of Panama sunshine and inspiration, from hilarious expat adventures to insider tips on living, investing, and having a blast in Panama. Curious to learn more? Go to choosepanama.com and snag your free copy of Panama Uncorked. Welcome to the Panama Podcast. With me today is David Bayliss from Dallas, Texas. David was one of the first pioneers coming to Panama. He came in, what year was it?
2010.
David, what was going on in your life and in the world before 2010 that led you to Panama?
Well, there's several things that were going on. One, I was in the mortgage business and that world was a disaster. Two, I had just paid my house off and I was looking at how my life in the future would be. And three, my disaster was telling me I don't like the business I'm in. I need to do something new.
So if everyone remembers, in 2008, the mortgage industry crashed and you were a mortgage banker.
Correct.
In that industry. And all of a sudden your world imploded. You were probably working 10 times as hard.
Easily.
There were some also legislative things going on. Tell us what was happening to your business as a business owner.
Well, in the state of Texas, I was licensed as a mortgage banker by the state. Well, the U.S. government came in and took over all of the states and made us government people. And wrote 2,000 pages of new rules. And so at the world that I lived in of owning a business, the rules all changed.
So it became a lot less fun.
Zero fun.
So zero fun, a lot less money. So you start looking around the world and saying, where else could I go?
And when you're 50, nobody wants you.
So what made you choose Panama?
Well, I really chose Mexico first because that's the place I'd been to many times, but I had a 14-year-old son and Mexico is just not safe enough no matter how you look. The resorts are okay, but Mexico wasn't going to work. I looked at the Cayman Islands, I looked at Colombia, I looked at Costa Rica, and Panama. When I visited Panama, it was just, boom, this is the place.
What made you decide automatically that it was the place?
Well, it was funny. One of my first things that attracted me here was the fact that it was the US dollar, which doesn't seem like much until you look at the other worlds that they have different currencies that move around. And then when I came here, it was like, I felt like home. It's a small country and it felt like a nice place. The people were nice. And so the decision making became really fast, especially when I found a school for my son to go to.
So it was you, your wife, and your son that moved here. You sold your house. You completely got rid of your US footprint.
That is 100% true.
What was it like when you landed?
Well, it was so funny. Landing was exactly the right word. We could only find the driveway of the principal's house, and that's where Trent and I ended up that morning. And he put his Superman shirt on and went to school, and he did not know where he lived.
Your son did not know where he lived?
No.
Because when you got to Panama, you went straight from the airport to school.
That's correct. And then when he came home that afternoon, he saw his new place.
What was it like for you and your wife during this transition period?
Well, that was pretty good. However, there were many things that were making life a challenge, like you just discussed. Marriage is difficult when your business is going down the tubes and you have all these changes. And so it was way better when I came to Panama, albeit not forever.
So you had been going through a rough spot in your marriage, and when you landed in Panama, things got better.
Yes.
You had a honeymoon period?
That's a nice word for it, yeah.
Is that fair to say? Okay. How long did that new honeymoon period last?
About 2 years.
Oh, that's nice. And how did your son transition?
Well, that start was so fast, it wasn't like he had a whole lot of choice, and he just instantly became acclimated. It happened so fast, I couldn't believe it. And so I think that abrupt change was hugely important for him.
So he was 14 at the time.
Yes.
So just starting high school.
Yes. And that was sort of the hurry, was to, if you're going to make that kind of a change, doing it before he went to high school was part of the, we call it the plan. And it was a great part of the plan.
Give me some comparisons between your life in Dallas versus your life in Panama. For example, in the afternoon, what did your son Trent do for activities, one place versus the other?
Well, this world, surfing became one of the tools. And so it was kind of funny. If you did all your work in school Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday, you had Friday off. And they had surfing lessons like cayuga classes, all sorts of stuff, water polo. I mean, so if you did well Monday through Thursday, Friday was a fun day, but you could still go to school on Friday if you need help in any subject. So he just took every possible sport Panama had to offer.
So he learned how to surf.
Very good.
What other sports did he learn?
Well, hiking, and that's there's a lot of hiking here, and he has maps of all these places, and he's hiking, and he also learned how to go to Panama City on a bus.
On a little busito. We call them busitos.
Yeah.
They're little chiquitita buses.
And never in a million years would you put your child on a bus in Dallas, Texas.
So the bus from where you live to Panama City is about an hour and a half.
Correct.
And the bus holds 15 people?
Something.
And what was the cost?
About $2.
So you'd give him $2. He'd get on the bus. He'd go to Panama City. He'd roam around the city.
They always went with friends, but they'd go to the movie theater, they'd get on a taxi and go to the next place, and they all came back alive every time.
And were you ever worried about him in a foreign country?
Yes. And it was like, if you get killed, I'm going to kill you. And what you did learn is you can run around this country any place you want to go and it's safe, even for a child.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Amazing. Now, what did your wife think of the transition?
Well, she was supportive of it because there was a fork in the road that we were all looking at. And so that fork, why not do Panama? And she embraced the whole Panama concept quite fast.
So when you got here, you're still working your business back in Dallas.
Right.
You're pretending you're in Dallas, even though you're not in Dallas. Your son's transitioned to a new school.
Yep.
How is your Spanish?
Well, that's the funny part about this whole thing. And I should not be able to do what I do in this country ever from the very beginning till now with my bad Spanish. I'm better now, and I can read quite well, and I can memorize questions. But luckily for me, the business is all English.
There's a lot of English speaking in Panama, which is one of those double-edged swords.
Yes.
Because it makes you not have to become better at Spanish.
And I wish I was better, and I hate to admit that I'm not, but I'm better now, sadly enough, but not good enough.
What's your favorite thing about living in Panama?
Well, it's funny. I thought I had freedom in the United States, but I didn't. I have more freedom in this country than I did in the US of A, and that's a strange concept. I'm free to go here, go there, do what I want, and there's not a whole lot of bad trouble that you can get into in this country.
Give me an example of what you mean by freedom.
Well, one funny example is I can open a car rental business in this country, follow all the laws, and I can just get it done. And I could never open a car rental business in Dallas, Texas.
Because of the legislation and the laws,
and just the cost it would take to do it. And here, we can just sort of wake up and say, I think I want to do this, and do it.
Speaking of which, David owns a car rental agency business. What's the name of it?
Panama Pacifica Car Rentals.
I'll go ahead and put a link down below in case you're in Panama and need a car. You specialize in things that are different than the big guys like the Hertz and the Avis.
Right.
Tell us what you specialize in.
Well, one of our things is we have some nice cars, Audis and Mercedes and things of that nature. We pick the client up at the airport and we deliver the car to the apartment that they're going to stay in. So we don't spend the 30 minutes walking around the car. We do everything online, and we don't even have an office for you to come pick the car up. It's just delivered to you.
So even though a lot of your renters come to Coronado, which is about 2 hours from the airport, you're still going to pick them up from the main Panama Tocumen Airport.
Yeah, or their hotel if they spend a couple of days in the city.
Okay, that's a nice service. Now, are most of your rentals, are they 1 or 2 or 3 day rentals, or do you have a minimum rental period?
If you're coming from the outside the country, we don't really have a minimum because no one's coming here for 1 day. So it sort of self-regulates itself. And so our typical rental is anywhere from 4 or 5 days to a month. And we have some rentals that are a year.
And what is your fleet like right now? You said you have some high-end cars.
Oh, well, thanks for asking. We have one car. We have one Kia Rio. Everything else is a version of an SUV. So Toyota Prado, which is a Land Cruiser in the United States. We have Audi A3, Q3, Q5. We have Mercedes, GLK. We have four Nissan 7 passengers, X-Trails, Nissan Pathfinder, just a wide variety of cars. And most of them have big tires for our roads that aren't perfect and get great gas mileage and are nice looking cars.
Okay, great. That's also a good segue into what don't you like about Panama? What's been the biggest challenge for you?
Well, we've all sat there with an empty glass of wine in our restaurants and wish that was better. But we have to also learn how to relax a little bit and just make eye contact and say, please come bring me some more.
And what he's referring to is sometimes in restaurants, we don't have the service that we might be used to. I think in Europe, you don't get that same level of service that you get in the United States. But in the United States, in a restaurant, especially because they make so much money from tips.
Right.
When your glass is empty, you are really ready for a refill or for someone to come ask you if you want another one. And if they don't, you have this little mental checklist.
Sure.
You're checking off and their tip is getting lower. But here you sometimes have to wave them down.
Now, with that being said, I've learned to relax, and I have a policy. If they bring me the wrong drink, I drink it. If they bring me the wrong food, I eat it. I'm a much happier guy.
By relaxing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I've seen that come from their home country and really get upset if they're given the wrong food in a restaurant or if something's wrong with their order. Maybe it's something small, like they ordered the salad dressing on the side and it comes on top of the salad. What's your advice to people like that?
Relax.
It is a lot easier. When I moved here, I didn't speak Spanish really at all. And I knew that I was going to have some adventures in restaurants because sometimes you order what you think is fish and you end up getting tongue of beef. And you just have to go with the flow.
And that's exactly one of my stories.
The tongue with beef.
Well, it must be my day for this.
Tongue is actually pretty common here.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, once you've been in Panama a while, you have a tongue story.
Well, that was it, and I ate it.
And it was actually delicious.
Good, right.
It was delicious until you find out it's tongue. And then there's sort of that moment of, Is it going to come back up?
So it's funny because learning to relax is part of what you need to do in this country because your AC repair guy will not be on time, more than likely. So read a book, take a chill pill.
And especially David lives in the beaches area. So I'm in Panama City or just outside of Panama City. David's in the beaches area. So if we get somebody scheduled for 9 o'clock, they might come between 9 and 10. If he gets somebody scheduled for 9 o'clock, they might come the next day.
Well, and the very first apartment that I had, it had no backup generator. And so the joke that we made a song that if there's no power, take a shower because the tank was on top. You can still take a shower with no electricity. Now, in buildings like this, there's never no electricity, so don't get nervous.
David, a lot of people that come to Panama are looking for a plan B. What's your advice to those people who might not be ready to move lock, stock, and 14-year-old like you did when you came, but who are looking for that plan B? What's your advice?
Well, it's almost like a relationship. They need to develop a relationship with Panama. And no place is perfect, but a plan B means you've done enough to find that place to be exciting, a place that you can come to. Maybe even buy an investment property. You've seen that happen where they have their toe in the water and then are waiting. If they decide to move later, then they could be in that property. But you have to find a relationship with the country.
That's a great advice, a relationship with the country. Sometimes that's coming and renting on a regular basis. Sometimes that's investing in a rental property. And then sometimes it's eventually moving full time. We do see a lot of people who think they're going to use a vacation property a month out of the year. And then over the course of time, the 1 month turns into 2 months, turns into 3 months, turns into half the year. And then they decide that it might be something that they want to do full time. Let's talk about how you look, David. I've known you for a long time. I think you look better now than you did in 2010. What's your secret?
Well, maybe it's that eating beef tongue from time to time and not sending my drinks back. But well, it's funny. Statistically, when I first moved here, I took 3 high blood pressure medications to be normal. Now I take one little microscopic one, and none of the pills are actually prescription. In this country, everything is not everything, but most are over the counter. So
Wait, I want to make sure people understand. What he's saying is it typically in, for example, the United States, if you need a medicine, you will need to get a prescription from your doctor for that medication. Here, you don't need to hand them a prescription. You're an adult, you can just go buy the medicine without the prescription.
right. And what my doctor here does, which is the backwards of the United States, he tries to get me on less and less. He checks me to get less, not more. And so now I'm down to one little pill a day, which is great for my body. And so that's just part of this whole thing. The food that we eat is fewer hormones and all sorts of things that are just more natural here without even trying to be organic, just with more natural things. And then another thing, I was preparing myself for this kind of a question because in Dallas, you exercise, you do this and that, then winter comes and then you stop.
Yeah.
And it becomes a yo-yo, so you don't have that path to stay. So I swim, my bike, I do a lot of things in this country, but I never have to stop. It's nice all the time. And so that little piece of I'm always doing something, therefore I don't kind of cycle back to getting a few extra pounds and have to get rid of that. It's just nice all the time.
And there's something about the humidity. I wear hats a lot, you know that.
Yeah.
And when it's a bad, humid day, the hat just goes on. But the humidity does beautiful things for the skin.
Well, I just did my 50-year high school reunion back in my high school.
50 years?
Yes.
Are you going to share with us how old you are?
68. And I looked better than they did. And it's funny, the lines on my face were less. I haven't had any surgery or done anything. The humidity is I'm in the sun way more than I should be. So it's the opposite of what you would think. So at the end of the day, I actually have somehow gone backwards.
And it's not just me saying that. A lot of people have mentioned the fact that you do look like you're aging backwards. For those of you who are listening on audio and not seeing this on video, I'm going to post a picture of David so you can see. I'm going to find one from 29 or 2010 so you can see the difference, because it really is amazing. People have said the same thing to me, and bless you, every single one of you that says that. But I do think it's the humidity when you're constantly exposed to that moisture. If you look at all the beauty products right now, they're all the hyaluronic acid. And what does that do? It brings basically the moisture from the air and brings it to your skin. When you're living in a country, in a place where there is a humidity level that is good for your skin, but also tolerable. I think it's less humid here than it is in Houston, Texas.
Well, and one thing, you figured this one out when you moved here, you buy eggs that are not refrigerated. And you think, well, how can I possibly do that? Well, our eggs are better. And you already know they taste better. So it's just, a lot of things are just totally different here.
Right. The food we're putting in our bodies, like you said, are fresher, fewer hormones. It's amazing how many people I talk to who've been here even just a few months to a year who already notice the difference from eating fresher, more whole food on a regular basis.
And you don't even have to try.
That's right. That's right.
It just is.
So your life has changed because you feel healthier.
Yes.
You feel like you have fewer aches and pains. Now, I know that you and your wife did not make it. That didn't last.
Correct.
So you're single now. You're dating.
Yes. And
tell us about what it's like to date in Panama as a 68-year-old man.
Well, the funny thing is, and it almost sounds fake, but they want a Texas gentleman. They want someone that opens the door and is polite and nice, and it's a commodity that's in short supply in the world today. And so that's the number one compliment that I get is exactly that. You're just being nice.
So you're saying in a roundabout way that dating here is easy for you?
Yes.
Fish in a barrel?
Well, yeah, and it's just
yeah.
Well, it is, because there's not that many people that are nice and genuine and relaxed and happy, and that it's called positive energy. And so if you have that, people are attracted to that.
In the Coronado area, are there a lot of single people to mix and mingle with?
Oh, of course. And we have the happy hour Picasso's on Wednesday. Don't have to be single to go, but it's just there's a lot of social events in our little world out there. More social events than you can possibly attend in a week. Tell
me about some of the activities for expats.
Well, I like a lot of outdoor stuff. And so There's groups that will go hiking, they'll pick a new place. There's groups that go to waterfalls. There's groups that will pick up and go to Panama City and go see a play. So there's a lot of different things. If you want to play golf, there are more golf groups than you can possibly stand. I'm not a golfer, so I can't say too much about that. I just look like a golfer.
I don't know how you look like a golfer.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'd rather go kayaking or stand up paddleboard, or there's just a thousand things that are just fun to do. And of course, I do love happy hour. Let's just be clear about that.
And I know you go out on boats a lot. You go whale watching.
Oh,
How many times a year do you think you rent a boat with some friends and go out on the water?
20.
So a couple times a month.
Oh, yeah. And it's a fun part of the business. It's not a business, it's a fun part of the life. So I'd rather take, instead of a small boat, I'd rather invite 10 people on a yacht and divide by the math on it. And we're all going on a nice yacht. And then when the whales are here, which the whales are,
About to be.
They're actually in Panama today. So yes, I'll put a boat together and we'll go look at whales. And it's not whale watching, we go whale chasing. They're there and we're going to go to find them.
Do you have a favorite whale watching story?
Oh, you bet I do. It was a funny day. We're on a monohull and out looking at whales or chasing whales. And the whale comes up on the side of the boat, looks at me with one eye, like eye contact like this, as close as you are. It goes back down, just a little bump as it goes across. And
It bumped the boat.
Just a little bit, just a little shoulder bump. Then it came up on the other side, so I've walked across the boat, and it turns and looks at me directly in the eye again, and then plops in the water. And
Oh my gosh, that gave me goosebumps.
I mean, it was amazing.
Oh, did you happen to get any
Of course not.
photos, videos?
I was staring at it like it was a nature moment.
Oh, I bet that's one of those things you'll remember for the rest of your
Forever.
life.
And it looked in me.
A lot of people may not know this, but Panama is in the migratory pathway. So every year from July through September, October, we have humpback whales, and it's whale watching season. So it is fun to go out on the boat and chase whales.
And
Whales.
that was the freedom part too. And I can jump in the water and just look at a whale.
Yeah, jump in the water if you want to. There's no disclaimer you have to sign. Jump at your own risk.
It's just stupid, but
but fun.
but fun.
What was the one thing before you moved to Panama that you thought, oh, I don't know if this is going to drive me crazy?
Well, it's funny. I thought, because being from Texas, I get eaten by mosquitoes when I visit my brother's house. And I really thought mosquitoes would be a big deal in this country. And it's like, if I tell people, oh, there's hardly any mosquitoes here, you can't even believe it. In my apartment, my windows and doors are open 24/7. There are no mosquitoes on the beach. Now, there's mosquitoes in the jungle. There are mosquitoes, but I'm going, how can that possibly be possible? And it's just the way it is.
I agree. It's one of those things that I would not have believed either. You don't you very seldom get bit by mosquitoes. Now, if you're near a beach with mangroves, we do have no-see-ums. They're also called chitres, which are sand fleas, which can be a little bit of a nuisance. They leave a welt, but the welt doesn't come up for about a day and a half after they bite you. So it's a little bit annoying, especially if you're here on vacation. But other than that, what other critters have you encountered in Panama?
Well, I go looking for critters. So it's really, I'm disappointed with my snake count, because I've had more snakes in my backyard in Dallas than I've seen in this entire country. And I'm looking for snakes. And I like to rescue turtles, but I love saving sloths, because, it's like, why did the sloth cross the road? The joke is it didn't. And so if I see a sloth, and I've done many, many sloth rescues, where you go behind the sloth and you pick it up and you put it on a tree.
Yes, sloths are very slow, which is why we have the word sloth, which means slow. And that is how you rescue it. If it's going across the street, you have to pick it up from behind so it doesn't scratch you, because it does have these long talon fingernails that if it feels threatened, it might scratch you.
But they're so slow and precious and a little bit stinky, so don't get excited, folks. I mean, you wash your hands after you save a sloth.
What is the healthcare system for you like in Panama compared to the U.S.?
Well, it's a funny thing. I have health insurance, and I pay $1,650 a year for my health insurance. I've never filed a claim. And when I thought I broke my arm, I went to the public hospital. They did an x-ray with a real x-ray machine that was digital at the public hospital. I got chastised for waiting 2 days because my hand was blue. And my entire expense was $12.50. So I've never filed a claim on my insurance ever. And so
$12.50 for
x-rays, stitches, and a scolding.
and the scolding was free.
Yes. And so I've never had a claim on my insurance, so I don't really know if it's any good. But so that's just a funny part of the whole life here.
How about times when you've seen the doctor for elective issues?
Well, my doctor speaks better English than I do, and my skin doctor is great. So I do go to doctors because you have to go to a doctor from time to time, and it's $12.50 to see my doctor. And
is that in Coronado?
That's in Coronado.
Okay.
And he's fantastic. He's the guy that tries to keep my blood pressure pills smaller and smaller and less and less. And it wouldn't surprise me if in the next year I can be zero.
Zero pills. And I know that this may not be a good comparison to some people, but my dog went to the doctor this morning. My husband took her and he forgot to take his wallet. So he shows up at the vet, no wallet. Of course, I can do an online transfer, but then we also needed some medicine that they didn't have. So she walked next door to the clinic, bought the medicine for him, used her own money, and then sent me a bill so that I could pay her for her services and pay for the medicine. I think that's something in the US that you would never find.
Oh, just the other day I went to Delta, filled up my car, and I had not a penny.
Delta's the gas station.
And the guys, I said, I'll be back later this afternoon. They said, no problem.
Because you're a regular.
Yes, but that's still amazing.
And that's happened to me in restaurants where there'll be a credit card sign somewhere. So you think, oh, they take credit cards. And then when you get your check, they don't take credit cards. And then they look at you and they do their little profiling and they know that they're going to get paid. So they say, just, pay us later.
Yeah. So some of the negatives turned out to be positives.
Absolutely. David, since you've been in Panama 14 years, I bet you know a lot of people who have healthcare stories. Do any stand out in your mind?
Well, an easy one is like the guy that needed the quadruple bypass at Johns Hopkins. That's a great one. But my favorite story is we're playing beach volleyball with a 6'4" Croatian guy that's like 31 years old who has a seizure on the sand volleyball, and his tongue is back. I mean, it's all this medical stuff. The ambulance came, took him to San Fernando Clinic, did everything that they're supposed to do that you could possibly do. That he didn't die or anything. He turned out to be okay, but the level of care was just astounding. The doctor came in from Panama City because they needed a specialist, came in from Panama City to see him that day. And so ambulance, the hospital, doctor from Panama City, and a follow-up the next day was like $500 with no insurance.
So no insurance, ambulance, emergency room, doctor, follow-up, $500. David, your son was in school. He went through high school in Panama, but I know you know a lot of people who have also had children in school. Can you tell me the pros and cons of putting kids in school, whether it be lower grades or high school in Panama?
Well, in my beach area, when my son went to school, there was only one international school. Now there's 4. It's just exploded. And so, but the real part that was amazing to me is he could have a private international school. At that time, it was $250 a month. Now it's $300 a month. That's the bargain of the century.
$300 a month. And what did that include?
Well,
everything?
Everything. Now, not a whole lot of food, but...
Okay, so everything but food. Activities,
yes.
Books.
And if we went to the city, there was like, we'd pay a little bit for the bus, but it was the best thing in the history of my world of what it did for him as a human being.
Okay. I know the schools in Panama City can be a lot more expensive
than that. They're more
that,
expensive, yes.
Because they're typical private schools where you're going to pay $1,000 or $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
You can.
But even then, that's cheaper than a private school in the United States.
Absolutely.
So I just want to give a plug for education in Panama for little kids. It was great.
Give me an example of 1 or 2 things that Trent got to do aside from surfing here in Panama in school that he may not have gotten the opportunity to do if he had stayed in Dallas.
Well, the field trip part was just a huge thing. The Van Gogh exhibit, this exhibit, that exhibit, going to the Caribbean to go on a boat day and onto an island in the Caribbean. They did so many things as a school. I just couldn't believe it.
So as a field trip, they got to go to the Caribbean.
Oh, yes.
Parents, if you let your children see this, they may be asking to move to Panama.
If they saw what life was like here as a kid, they would move to Panama without the parent.
And Trent, every time I saw him, he was this little brown berry, and it was just had this 8-pack ripped abs because he was constantly hiking, surfing, playing, running, doing active things outside, things that we used to do when we were kids, versus a lot of kids now just sit at home in front of the computer.
And that to me is just a horrible experience. So yeah, outside was the best deal ever.
As we wrap up, David, do you have any final thoughts about your 14 years in Panama?
Yeah, it's funny because I do look younger. I'm happy, healthy, and it's sort of like almost going to school. You learn something new, like started the car business, whatever. It's just a very different world, and it's a world that I embrace it totally.
Absolutely. I think it's a lot easier here to be an entrepreneur because we are not saddled by so many rules and regulations. Also, one of the interesting things here, if you get to a market like Dallas or any big city, it's crowded. So whatever business you think of, there's probably somebody else who's thought of it first. So it's hard to find that really original idea. But here, if you do something well, it can be original, even if it's not original in the world or the world that you're from. It can be original here. Or even if it exists here, you can do it better or do it differently and still be successful. I think that's one of the great things for people now is we're having people move here at a younger age. So not necessarily just retirees. Panama always hits the top of the list of the best places to retire, but it's also should be, I think, more well-known as the best places to actually live a full life.
And that secret is out. I mean, I see younger people coming here all the time.
United Nations just did an in-depth survey. It's about 175,000 people. They interviewed expats from around the world from about 75 different countries and nationalities. And they found that the people who lived in Panama were the happiest expats of all the expats from around the world. I thought that was a stunning survey.
Well, I guess I'm one of them.
Exactly. We're two of the happy ones. This has been such an interesting discussion for me because I've known David for so very long. Thank you so much for joining us, David. And in your honor, I have a rosé from Provence. So thanks for joining us. See you next time on the Panama Podcast. Cheers.
Salud.